So nothing is happening yet, but it's about to happen. It's, so New York City teachers were fired yesterday. First, not just teachers, school staff. So cafeteria janitors, school safety officers, teachers assistants, administrative people who are unvaccinated by the weekend yesterday could not enter the building. They're technically legally not fired. New York City generally doesn't fire teachers, even if they get passed out drunk in the middle of a classroom. One teacher that happened to was sent to a so-called rubber room where it's like internal suspension for adults, where they just get a full salary to spend day after day under the watch of a security guard just sitting there, um, and with full pay. And so these teachers are getting suspended for a year with no pay, so they're being treated worse than the teacher who got drunk and passed out in class in the middle of their students. Um, that's how bad these school staff are being treated if, say, they had natural immunity and they didn't want to get the vaccine. Um, anyway, so they're in court this morning because the ones who wanted religious exemptions, de Blasio's executive order says that it has to be from an established religion. So we're going to find out in court whether de Blasio can establish a religion or determine which religions are established. And then they had the DOE, the Department of Education, um, was interviewing, like you had to go in for an interview for the Department of Education bureaucrats to determine whether your religious views were authentic. So they're in court this morning for requesting a temporary restraining order um, against that. I think they're going to ask for a temporary restraining order against the whole mandate on the basis that the enforcement of it has been fraudulent and unconstitutional. And I think one of the so whether De Blasio can determine what is an established religion, uh, First Amendment, anyway, and whether the Department of Education bureaucrats can determine the authenticity of your religious beliefs is apparently going to be part of the courtroom. Um, so you can call in. So someone told me, I called in and I'm on it now. Nothing's happening yet. This is waiting for it to get rolling. And you can call in, but I someone told me that it was full. And so I don't know if that's true or if it was a glitch, but I was kind of thinking about streaming it, and if it's, because just in case it does get full or it is full already, as that experience suggested, it sort of pushed me onto streaming it. Um, and let's see, can I edit, or maybe I can put in the chat. So I'm putting in the chat where you can call into it, presuming that the previous person's experience of it being full isn't replicated. And then while I'm here, I guess if anyone wants to ask me questions about the vaccine mandates or whatever, but uh, so if you were on YouTube yesterday, you saw that. So Taylor Ward asked who filed the lawsuit, how many actual education professionals in the protest crowd. Um, I have no idea. So based on shows of hands, I would say that about a third to a half of the people at yesterday's rally were fired, and I'm used the word fired as colloquially speaking, like most legally they're saying they're not fired, but they're fired. Um, so I would estimate that a third to a half of those people were Department of Education staff who were fired. Um, and I don't think that reflects. I don't think it was anywhere near the number of people who were actually fired. I think that was a small percentage of the overall people fired. Um, and then, uh, but I'm not good at people counting. So I have 6 hours of footage on YouTube, and I'm going to edit it into a collage that'll be 20 to 30 minutes today, and I'll post it everywhere. And then I do have some really good footage that would allow someone who's good at crowd counting to guess how many people were there. So if you can guess how many people were there, I'll throw out 600, but some people from my video thought thousands. Yeah, I could see others saying a few hundred. I'm not good at counting crowds. But multiply that by a third to a half, and I think that's how many people were fired who were at the rally. Now, in terms of who got fired, I have no idea because the numbers from stats last week up to last week were saying that 30,000 employees were at risk of being fired. Um, but we know whoever didn't whoever of those people didn't get fired basically feels violated, right? Like I had someone respond to me yesterday when I emailed out people about the march, or 2 days ago. I it's too late for me. I gave in and I feel violated now. So there's got to be a lot of, there's got anyone who vaccinated at the 11th hour just to not get fired and held out that long must feel very violated. So, and so, there's starting to be some chatter in the chat room, so I'm going to start trying to stream that soon. Nothing started. They're just, you can hear people talking. So anyway, I haven't seen any stats on who, and besides anecdotal, like this is who I was talking to stuff. So it's possible that 70 to 80% of those people got vaccinated like on Friday. And in which case, it's still thousands of people. So either way, it's thousands of people. Ivermectin Beef says Garland just said the DOJ now considers school protesters domestic terrorists. Can you post the title of the article so I can search it? The links don't work. Or, you didn't post a link, but the links don't work in this chat because I'm using Restream to take the chats from everywhere together. But what I saw, when I saw claims that some people were considered domestic terrorists, it turned out to be they were saying these people, given the concern about this, there might be a threat of domestic terrorism. So they're hinting at it, but they're not really saying we identify them as domestic terrorists. So I think, all right, so I need to share my computer audio. Let me see. Excuse me. If I was a student, I'd be quarantined for 4 days. I think I'm gonna have to share my entire screen to get the audio. Let's see here. Let's all right, so if I share my entire screen, I don't know why I want to share this. So this is what my dashboard looks like in Restream. So can you guys hear like vague chatting in the background? Because that's the audio. Because if you can hear the actually no one's chatting right now. If you can hear some noise that sounds like people are rummaging around in a room, then I've successfully shared the audio. Although I'll wanna, I don't want my screen to look like this. Daniel Crawford says we filed here in New Zealand. Judge agreed that V rollout to masses was illegal, as opposed to a limited number of people as provision allowed. Government changed the law within 24 hours. That's great. So, all right. So nothing's happening yet. So let's I'm gonna go back to that if it sounds like things are starting. Um, Mike says Merrick Garland mobilizes FBI to address a spike of threats by parents who oppose critical race theory against school boards and teachers. Has nothing to do with teachers protesting. Uh, yeah, interesting. Um, I personally think that teachers and students and parents should leave the schools and declare independence from the Department of Education. I think now is the perfect opportunity. People are furious all over the place about what stuff's being taught. You know, and on critical race theory, some of the stuff is ridiculous, but some of the stuff that they were teaching in Southern school textbooks about, like, well, in our state, slavery was nice, unlike the other states, are also ridiculous. So there's a lot of, and there's, you know, there's many other things being taught in schools that parents are furious about. But you know, here, uh, if you're vaccinated, you should still be furious that a substitute teacher is going to take over the actual teacher's job for the next year. So anyway, I mean, I was educated this way. When I was 15, I left high school and I went to this school for unschoolers that was started. It was founded by two teachers from the Amherst, Massachusetts school system who said, "This is ridiculous." And what they thought was ridiculous was they just felt like they were, you know, had a too structured of a teaching people what to think, you know, organize your thoughts by the school bell kind of. So they gave so anyway, they left the Amherst school system and they just took 30 of their students with them and they started a school for unschoolers. And then the onboarding materials, my mom found this place. Um, and the onboarding materials, first thing they had you read was John Taylor Gatto's The Seven Lesson School Teacher. It's an essay that he wrote after he was New York State Teacher of the Year in 1991. And he has the essay is the gist of it is, you know, public schooling was invented at a time when 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 people were working in factories and they wanted to, you know, the Rockefellers and others wanted to acclimate the population to being ordered around in a factory. And so the school bell was borrowed from the factory bell, and they wanted you, you know, they wanted to train people to sit to like a dog or something where, you know, you're thinking about English now. 45 minutes is up. Bing ding 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 ding. You're thinking about mathematics now. It's like it's like the exact opposite of how I do any work, right? Like if I want to do real productive work, I want to block out time where I'm working on the book and I just do nothing but work on the book all day for a week and then I get out of that, go do admin things. You know, the human brain is optimally effective when you're immersed in something. And school does you know, it's set up to do the literal opposite of that. So anyway, so the onboarding was you read this essay, and then if you're into it, they give you Grace Llewellyn's book, The Teenage Liberation Handbook, How to Quit School and Get a Real Life and Education. And this school was like, it's called North Star Center for Teens now. At the time, it was called Pathfinder Learning Center. You can go and you can look at it, it's still operating. So this is, they must be operating now for 25 years or something, where they just said, screw the school system. They took the students with their parents, they left, and they declared them all themselves homeschoolers, and they made their own school. And so they're starting something, but the audio is terrible. Um, and you know, so I think, at minimum, and so like the requirements for homeschooling are different by district. So New York City would probably be a lot worse than where I was, where I just like all I did was I made a list of what I was going to do at the beginning of the year, and then at the end of the year I did a list of what I did. So it's for English, I was going to read these 10 books, and I read 10 different books, and I said I read these 10 different books. Um, but at this point, I feel like they should just leave, take the parents with them, make great schools, and then say screw you to the compliance paperwork and hold the DOE up in endless court battles, and then start like taking donations from everyone across the world who wants to undermine the bureaucracy of the public school system with great teachers, and then to fund the lawsuits or something like that. Um, because because that would be truly declaring independence from the DOE. Um, but it's notable. Like read Thomas Sowell's new book, Charter Schools and Their Enemies. I don't know how this dude is in his 90s and he wrote like 2 books this year, but so he produced a very good analysis that in New York City, even when you match by neighborhood by looking just at the charter schools that are in the same building as a public school. So a lot of these charter schools, they just have like a room in a building that's otherwise for a public school or whatever. And they are publicly funded, but they are not directly regulated by the DOE. And um, so they more than close and actually exceed the closing of the racial educational achievement gap in New York City. That is disabled students, homeless students, Black students, Latino students, no matter what underperforming demographic you would expect, they outperform the city average and the state average and the rich white people and whatever gap you want to address. And the only thing that's different from them legally is they're not directly regulated by the Department of Education. So all that shows you is that Department of Education regulation of education is poisonous to educational achievement. And so the goal should be screw the DOE, throw it out. But anyway, with that said, so I don't agree with everyone on that. I'm not really into public school, but I'm also not into you know, taking someone's pay away so they can't feed themselves and their family because they didn't get uh, a short-term studied medical injection that they were told they have to get, obey, or don't eat. Um, and so I was just amused and annoyed when I got kicked out of my gym, but I'm just boiling furious over tens of thousands of people getting kicked out of work over this. This is insanity, and it's I've talked to people who had religious exemptions in healthcare workers. So one of them had their religious exemption denied and is suspended. Another two work at the same hospital. One of them they had a certain deadline to submit the religious exemption, and then before the deadline, they said we're not taking any religious exemptions, and they took down the portal to submit it. And so the one who hadn't submitted it yet, who works at the same hospital as the first guy who did, said, "Oh, I can't submit it." But then a week later, a federal judge issues a temporary restraining order on their rejection of the medical exemption. It says you must, by law, accept medical exemptions. So the second person says, "Oh, I guess I should submit it." So this person goes to the portal. Portal's not there, so sends the email to HR. HR says, "Thanks, we'll review this." Then they say, "You missed the deadline. You're suspended." This person missed the deadline because they took it down. And said you can't submit it a week before the deadline, and they're now violating the federal judge's temporary restraining order because it doesn't refer to the deadline. But the person who did get the religious exemption now has to eat lunch in a segregated cafeteria, can't eat with the vaccinated people, has to wear a mask while eating. and has this behavioral code where this person gets docked points based on their transmissive behavior that the vaccinated people don't get. This is the institution of mass psychosis. I don't care what you think about the vaccine. If you think that is not utterly insane, you need to reevaluate how you consider what's insane. Jan 2052, vaccinated get a pass because they obeyed. They obeyed, period. They have the same amount of infectious virus in their nose, according to Public Health Madison and Duane County in collaboration with CDC Atlanta. A random sample of the total samples of swabs that show infectious virus that can be calculated that can be cultured in a dish and shown to grow in cells, is the same between vaccinated and unvaccinated people, whether they have symptoms or not. The only difference is vaccinated people with infectious virus in their nose are more likely to be asymptomatic. So they're more likely to go out when they should have stayed home. So vaccine mandates, I'm strongly leaning towards believing, politically, I'm against them, and that nothing changes that. But as I read the research, I was almost leaning towards vaccines reduce transmission until I read more research. I'm now leaning towards believing that vaccine mandates will spread the virus radically through behavior change that has no scientific basis. Because if you believe falsely that you are less likely to spread it, and physiologically you are no more likely to spread it, but physiologically you are more likely to have an experience that you believe means you're not sick, being asymptomatic when you are a spreader, then the combination of the messaging and the physiologically driven asymptomaticness will drive you to change your behavior in a way that spreads it. And so it's a public vaccine mandates are a threat to public health. And as who are these people? Marty McCary and I forget the other guy. I follow him on Twitter. The Swedish guy. So I'm blanking. I just woke up and I was editing my video footage from yesterday, so I'm on less sleep than usual. Trying to find him in my Twitter feed. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? The Swedish guy, that public health guy who's very vocal against lockdowns, and he's pro-vaccine and he's anti-mandate. Oh my, where did my all right, I got too many windows open. Okay, no one in the chat knows. I'm gonna keep looking at my Twitter feed. Actually, you know what? I think I liked his tweet this morning, so I'm gonna go to my profile, likes. Oh no, I retweeted it actually. I retweeted it. Martin Kulldorff, that's who I'm talking about. All right, so I think Martin Kulldorff is correct about this. That so this is one of many criticisms of the vaccine mandate that he's made, but failure to recognize naturally acquired immunity has harmed public health, broken trust in public health officials, and decreased vaccine confidence. The damage will take a generation to repair. I mean, I doubt it, because I think that that damage is intentional, because they're directly divorcing what you do from any common sense or logic. and they're training you to obey things that make no sense. Okay, so court proceedings are starting, so I'm gonna try to share this in a way where you can hear the audio. Um, so it's because I'm called in, so I'm not on an internet tab, so I can't share it by tab. So I'm sharing. Um, so you should be able to like vaguely hear people moving and squeaking. Let me know if you can hear that. Well, it quieted down. So um, right now there's just like some knocking sound. Well, luckily it quieted down, so I can figure out if hmm. I know what to do. I'll just pull up like a YouTube video and see if you can hear it. Um, or just like something else that makes noise on my computer. Uh, all right, here's one of my videos. So can you guys hear BH4 versus tyrosine? Can you hear that video? Hi, I'm Chris Master John. I have a PhD in nutritional sciences. So we're listening to this video as an audio test. Can you hear it? Oh, well, that's good to know. I'm not sharing my audio. Okay, okay, okay. All right, so it's good that nothing has started yet. Um, Stop sharing. All right, so I need to find the sharing audio settings, I guess. Um, Damn it. Oh no, okay, so the only damn it. How can I is a problem. So there's no way to share the audio while sharing the whole screen, but I'm on a Skype call. I'm using Skype to call in to the proceedings, which haven't started yet. Um, I would have thought court proceedings start exactly on time. It's interesting. Um, so I don't know if excuse me, I don't know if I can the way to get audio is to get it in a Chrome tab, but I'm in the Skype app. And so I think if I call in again, even if I can get Skype in a Chrome tab, I'm gonna call in again, it's gonna be full according to other people. Um, and so I'm trying to think if there's a clever way to get around this issue. Um, I mean, I guess I could. I guess what I could do is I could use. Well, assuming that this is comes in each side of this. Okay. I guess I could put the. I could put the mic of this. Wait, is that gonna work? Yeah, I could turn on. I could just use my. So I guess first of all, if I go to external microphone built in, can you guys hear me now? Now, did it change? Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Now you can. Now you can hear me? Okay. All right, so this audio output has default telestream audio capture virtual, default virtual headphones built in. All right, I don't know what the default is, but I'm going to change the audio output to this. Okay, do you guys hear me now? Oh yeah, I'll try. Yeah, that's a good idea. I'll try that video again. Oh, on YouTube we can listen to we can listen to we can listen to this live video on YouTube. Okay, let's do a different one. Okay, this is designing for happier living. Can you guys hear me?
Where we live,
Can you hear the music in the background? Build community. La. Can you hear that? Shape culture and influence our identity. Can you hear that?
But as our cities continue to grow, they become more at risk of overcrowding.
No one can hear that.
Resulting in cities.
Okay, can you guys even hear me? Yes, what? Yes, you heard me, or yes, you heard that video? You heard that video. Okay. So that means you might now be able to hear the courtroom. I mean, nothing's happening, so it's hard to. If you could hear that YouTube video, you can probably hear the court when it starts. And if you notice, okay, so if you notice like tapping or like someone's walking around in a room, that's the court proceeding. I don't know if they told us to come early or, oh, you know what? They probably told people to get there at 9 because it started at 10 and it takes an hour to get through metal detectors or something like that. Especially if there's a lot of people, I guess. I don't know. So just go on my, just search Chris Masterjohn on YouTube. My YouTube is youtube.com/Chris Masterjohn. Also, I'm not balding. I've had a receding hairline since I was a child. No net hair loss. Anyway, so you should be able to find me super easily on YouTube just by searching. But on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, my bio also has a link to everywhere you can find me. So my link to YouTube is there. But on YouTube, and if you just go to my channel and then my videos on YouTube, you'll see all my content. There's 6 hours of live footage from the march yesterday there that I am in the process of editing. So the deal with the religious exemptions. So I hope the proceeding is not starting yet because the audio quality on that is terrible. So the religious exemptions is, vaccine law has always considered the First Amendment to say that the government can't tell you what your religion is, and the Civil Rights Act to say you can't discriminate based on religion. Therefore, did you hear someone say hello? And a phone ring in the background? Yeah, I mean, most of the noise is not audible to me either, but the phone rang and someone said hello, and it was clear to me. So anyway, vaccine law. Okay, good. So hopefully that means that they're not started yet, and something of that audio quality will start. Anyway, with the religious exemption, so vaccine law, generally speaking, has used the Civil Rights Act and the First Amendment to say you can register a religious objection, and the government can't tell you whether your religion is true or not. And so, with these exemptions, de Blasio has, by executive order, said that you need a letter from a, quote, established religion, although I thought the state couldn't establish a religion, and then the DOE, the Department of Education, has people who will interview you.
Can you press *6 and mute yourself, please?
Everyone heard mute yourself, please. Oh shit. I haven't been muted on the call. It's possible the people so I'm muted now. Oh my god. Okay. So the DOE has been interviewing people and being like, your religion is authentic, your religion is not authentic. And so they're seeking a temporary restraining order on the basis of the enforcement of the mandate has been ridiculous and fraudulent and illegal. And so I believe they're asking for a TRO, temporary restraining order, on the whole mandate on the basis that the enforcement has been nonsense. But I don't know if they're going to break it down. Maybe the judge is like, well, the TRO applies to this, but not that.
Hi, good morning. Is this conference start already? I don't hear anything.
That sounds like a caller who's wondering what's going on. So I have to mute myself on Skype because I'm the one called in. You guys don't have to mute yourself because you're just listening to whatever is on my audio. At some point, I have to find a distance that displays my T-shirt. He's speaking, but it's so quiet.
Can you please mute yourself? *6 is to unmute, not to mute.
*6 is actually for both, so if you press it again, it'll mute you again.
Yes, press it again, it'll mute you again. That's for all of us who watched it very early, and they mute themselves. So what is it, *6 or *6?
All you need to do is just press mute on your phone. Just press the mute button.
Yeah,
Or you can press *6.
Oh, that might have been quiet because someone was talking to their audience who is not muted. They're making me paranoid.
If you press *6, it will tell you your line is muted or unmuted, so you can figure it out by that.
the conference start yet?
Okay, so it's just people who are calling in on the conference. That's why their audio is bad, and they're talking about muting. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm effectively muted, right? Someone tell me if I'm not muted.
I think someone is doing that on purpose.
Daniel, I'm sorry I interfered with your meditation. Giant 2852, personal religious religion supersedes state's interpretation. According to some lawyers' interpretation, the state can't have an interpretation of your religion. First Amendment says the state can't establish a religion. State has no right to interpret anything about your religion, period. I mean, Michelle, my audio is all the way up, but nothing started yet. So it sounds to me like the people who are in charge of the phone thing have good audio. So hopefully it's good when things actually start. It's not started yet.
Can you mute yourself, please?
Am I not muted? Because my phone's showing me muted. I'm so worried that I'm not muted, but Skype has me clearly muted. But whenever they say, can you mute yourself, I worry they're talking about me. But there's like 500 people on the call, so probably not. Daniel, how many laws already in violation of the Constitution? Well, depends on your view and interpretive framework, but probably a lot. Mark Strumpf, if you already have had COVID and then later get the shot, do you lessen your natural immunity? I mean, the data say no. The data say you enhance your natural immunity. But now that I'm doing so much research to try to understand whether vaccines reduce transmission, I do wonder whether they alter the immunity in a way that is less ideal. And I don't know enough to say this, but one thing that's very understudied is that the immunity that you really, really want is mucosal IgA. So that means secreted IgA antibodies, which are mop things up but are not inflammatory in your eyes, nose, mouth, and throat. And in unvaccinated people, the vaccine preferentially stimulates systemic immunity. And even in the mucosa, it preferentially stimulates IgG, which is inflammatory and less effective than IgA. And so I do wonder whether the vaccine might bias you away from the non-inflammatory, highly effective mucosal IgA. But I'm not sure if that's true. I haven't read all the data on looking at the antibody response, but I do know that most studies like that don't look at mucosal immunity. So most of those studies are extremely flawed in that they're not even looking at the most relevant thing. But the infection risk studies suggest that if you have natural immunity, you have 27 times better immunity than someone who had vaccine at the same time as your infection. But then each shot seems to reduce your infection risk another 20%. It's from observational studies, but infection risk is the main thing you would want to look at. So I mean, you're starting out with 27 times better immunity. So you should have the right to know whether you want. Oh, and by the way, so 20% can, if you take the reciprocal of 20%, it's like a sorry, I'm not awake yet. You can state those numbers in various ways, but like a fifth of a 27-fold difference is a large fold difference, but you've already reduced the risk to real low, right? And that 27 is for severe illness, and 13 is for infection.
Can anyone hear me?
Someone's talking.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. How long have you guys been waiting? Since 9?
I don't know. I got in about 9:40, and someone asked that if the conference has started, and they stated not yet. We've been
Okay.
waiting for about an hour.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So we just press *6 to mute and unmute, correct? Okay.
More people are joining the phone.
Okay. All right. So let's see how this goes. Keep our fingers crossed, ladies and
Yep.
gentlemen.
Gentlemen, yeah.
This is some sick times right now.
True.
Beyond sick.
You guys,
Beyond,
you guys can hear
beyond,
people
beyond.
saying
It's
beyond sick
so much
times we're
effort
in.
into this. All right. I have a lot of faith in Sujata. I think she's going to be able to do miracles.
Yeah, we gotta have faith in God. Foremost. Yes.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Amen. God help us all.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen.
Jan 2052 says, watching motivational speakers lately, they say during times of turmoil to find purpose and bring value to those who need it, rise to the occasion through emboldenment. You're doing exactly that. Thanks. That's what I was thinking when I was thinking I'm doing that. Jan 2852, I'm talking about
Can you repeat that?
nutrition lifestyle.
Can you please repeat that one more time?
It's LC, L as in Larry, C as in Charles, .org. And it's a Christian nonprofit organization that has been helping a lot of people with religious exemptions, and they filed a lot of lawsuits already. So they have a lot of resources as well. If you might check them out.
Lori, I had COVID twice. Early 2020, there were no tests. And 6 months later, I did not test antibody positive, but the symptoms are exceedingly convincing to me, as well as demographic factors surrounding me and other people. More recently, a few months ago, I got COVID and I confirmed it with the lateral flow home antigen test twice. And then I did get an antibody test after that, which confirmed COVID infection, including the most convincing being IgM to nucleocapsid. What was it? IgM to it was either IgM to nucleocapsid or it was they didn't have that, and IgG to nucleocapsid, IgM to spike. I forget. But point being, I had IgM, which shows recency, and I had nucleocapsid antibodies, which shows natural infection. So I would say the most recent one is confirmed by pretty convincing lab work, given that the home antigen test agrees with the antibody tests. I got all the antibody tests that LabCorp has. And no, I didn't get a vaccine. I'm definitely not getting a vaccine at this point. I mean, first of all, I've had COVID twice, so why would I? I mean, I must have like insane immunity at this point. But I mean, I probably wouldn't have gotten it anyway, because I'm biased towards not putting foreign things in my body unless I'm very convinced of their need. Whether that bias is, more intense than it should be by some people's view. I don't know, it is what it is. But, you know, particularly now, I mean, with the mandates and everything, I feel a civic duty not to get it. But, I mean, I feel a civic duty not to get it because I can also assess to me that the risk of not getting it is real low. So I do think that people who are older and, you know, people who view, people who would qualify as having a pretty significant risk of dying of COVID over a 6-month period should strongly consider getting it, or should be, you know, have made a very clear decision about what they're doing to protect themselves instead of getting it. You know, because at some point when your risk of dying of COVID is high enough, the risk reward for the vaccine over a 6-month time frame makes sense. Although the risk reward over a 2-3 year period, no one knows. And that's why I say, you know, if you're likely to die over the next 6 months, then you don't have to consider what are the long-term effects. You can just say, well, if I don't get this, I might die within 6 months. And, you know, my risk of dying over 6 months is worse with COVID than with the vaccine. That's all you have to think about. Mark Strumpf says, does the shot on top of natural immunity lessen the duration? I don't see how that's possible. That makes no sense to me. You know, I do have concerns that the shot on top of natural immunity might bias the type of immunity. Actually, there's data on that. There's data showing that there's not data with natural immunity, but there's data showing that the second shot makes you it narrows your immunity away from the variants towards the original Wuhan strain. And so that's probably a matter of you know, I'm going to guess, so like immunity is, and this would be found in an immunology textbook, or a molecular biology textbook would have a chapter on immunology that would cover this. So there's a process called somatic hypermutation and germinal selection or something like that. It's a very fascinating process of natural selection operating in real time rapidly within your body. So what happens is when you first get an infection, you pick B and T cells that some version of this happens with both, but I'll just talk about B cells. So you take B cells that that can respond to that, but they're not super specific. They're going to be cross-reactive with different things. And then over the course of the illness, they get brought into you know, immune centers, and then they purposefully shuffle around their DNA and make
Anyone know what's going on?
they make mutations. They shuffle around their DNA, and they produce lots of variation that didn't exist before.
You know, I'm just noticing that the new number and access code that was posted is the same one as the old one. So I'm wondering if the update was correct.
I don't know. I just texted one of the plaintiffs who's actually in the courtroom to see what's going on. So I'm waiting to get a text back.
Okay, yeah, let's put you here, because I noticed that the access code is the same unupdated one, so we might be in the wrong run.
Oh no, we might be in the wrong room. We're checking with the plaintiff. So
People close to me. I didn't hear anything. I didn't either. So the question is this the right access code? Let me see if I got a response from this person.
Okay, thank you. So I got this number from teachersforchoice.org, and there was supposedly an update on the access code and phone number, but it's the same one as the old one that was posted yesterday.
Oh.
The court clerk told me that
gave me the same number this morning as we got yesterday, even though we were told it was different.
Okay.
So we're on the right call.
After an hour.
I think so. Somebody told me it hasn't started yet as of 9:54. So I think we're okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I know somebody who's
Sure.
physically there, but she hasn't updated me yet.
Okay, I'm gonna see if I can. All right, might not matter now. I was gonna see if I could lower my call volume so I could talk over it. Okay, so the B cells undergo somatic hypermutation, which means that they create variation for natural selection to act on, and that it's not really natural selection; it's selection mediated by comparing the antigen to the antibodies, and so the immune system basically kills off the B cells that are less selective, and then pumps up the B cells that are more selective. And so I think what's happening in the two-shot schedule, where first you have, like, after one shot you have less of an antibody response, but that antibody response is more broadly reactive across the variants, whereas after the second shot the antibody response goes higher, but it becomes narrowed to the original Wuhan strain. And so I think the stimulation of the immune system is stimulating more affinity maturation and somatic hypermutation, which means more response that says, okay, let's be real specific to this antigen, because now we're getting hit again by it. And so it does seem quite possible that the same thing would happen with natural immunity, where natural immunity starts off much broader than the vaccine, because your immunity is generated even if over the course of the infection you have the somatic hypermutation affinity maturation, but it's to all the various different parts of the virus. Whereas, the vaccine is very specific to spike. And so I do think it's possible that the natural immunity would be narrowed by the vaccine, leading to killing off some of the more broader, killing off or just like down regulating their multiplication, kind of telling them go away for later or whatever. So it might very much narrow the response towards the Wuhan, the pre-fusion stabilized engineered version of the Wuhan spike. And so it's one of those things where mechanistically there are so many questions, and observationally there is there's a modest extra benefit against infection risk. And in some of the trials they also show they show that the risk of reinfection is low, but in the first place, but the vaccine does reduce it. So although the trials generally aren't done against a broad spectrum of variants, so that's another factor, right? So I would say with very weak confidence, you're starting with amazing protection and you are enhancing it with the vaccine, but it's quite possible that you're enhancing it in ways that would be less ideal than having re-exposure to a minimal or beneath minimal infectious dose, which you can't control. So the argument in favor of the vaccine would be, well, you can control the dose. I think less is known than is unknown at this point. I can come up with more questions and answers. Chris Seox says, we don't hear much about memory T cells these days. Are tests on these affordable? That depends how much money you have. So I haven't tried to get one, but I believe the T cell test is a few $100s and insurance doesn't cover it. So, but I question the relevance for anything other than curiosity. So as I was saying before, serum tests, no matter what they are terrible indices of immunity if you have natural immunity. Okay, if you have a vaccine, Moderna did a great study with their vaccine that shows that neutralizing antibodies and um, just anti-IgG, anti-spike IgG in general are excellent markers of vaccine-mediated immunity in the serum. That is because the vaccine is designed to increase anti-spike IgG in the serum, and the neutralizing antibodies in the serum are anti-spike IgG antibodies. That's why it's a good index for the vaccine. And the vaccine immunity is completely qualitatively totally different from natural immunity. It's not a matter of quantifying it. It is a matter of being different. And yes, the vaccine also induces T cell immunity as well. But natural immunity generates dimeric and tetrameric secretory IgA in the mucosa. That means in your eyes, nose, mouth, and throat, there are antibodies that are non-inflammatory, that all they do is bind stuff and mop it up, that are 15 times or 7 times more effective than all other antibodies, depending what you're measuring it against. 7 to 15 times more effective than all other antibodies. And these are IgA. IgA are the one class of antibody that is not inflammatory. And dimeric means
to Ray Flores. I just texted Michael Caine. He told me it hasn't started yet.
Okay. The reason we haven't started is because it hasn't started and not because we're on the wrong call. That's good.
Thank you so much for the update.
Thank you.
Thank you for that update.
Thank you. We were beginning to think it was a hoax.
So,
Yeah, it was too quiet, reading over an
All
hour
right.
already.
all right. How do is there a way to silence my Skype? I don't know. So, dimeric, tetrameric means
Hope everyone is doing okay. I think we're gonna get over this. Just scan the line.
okay. I'm gonna
Don't give in. This is our resistance, and this we're fighting for.
Okay.
Agree. Anything we can do, we have to do it.
Okay. So, 2 IgA is a dimer, and 4 IgA, I don't have 4 hands, is a tetramer. And so these multimeric, meaning many pieces put together, secretory, meaning floating around freely, IgA, meaning the one class of antibodies that's not inflammatory, in the mucosa, meaning in the mucosal surfaces of the eyes, nose, mouth, and throat.
If we don't fight now, our children and our grandchildren will be set up for a very dismal and dark future.
I got a great mom and kid
Agreed.
from the rally yesterday.
Totally agree.
Mom fired as a teacher.
That's absolutely
Kid
correct.
holding a sign that on one side says "Teachers today, kids next," and then the other side says "I'm next."
We're fighting here for all of humanity.
Vaccinate the kids next. That's what they're pushing for now.
Yep, and we're fighting for the people who don't know. Fighting for the people who don't know that we need to fight for them. They will one day.
Yeah.
The governor already is going to add it to the list of vaccines required to attend school. That came out this morning.
They needed to get rid of us first. So I've been fighting this for 2 years. My kids were kicked out of school in 2019 when they repealed the religious exemption.
Mine
And,
too.
yep. And the
New York
best thing I ever
State, all the states except for Pennsylvania don't allow religious exemptions for children under 18.
So I guess the governor is already
2019 all over again.
already planning to make vaccination for kids dependent
Except
a
maybe
contingency for school.
against mandating
Okay, I figured out how to reduce just my Skype volume. So So the vaccine, so natural immunity is overwhelmingly biased towards these eyes, nose, mouth, and throat non-inflammatory antibodies that mop up the virus without causing inflammation. And okay, I brought it real quiet so I can hear if the court proceeding starts. So, okay, these people are, let me bring it to 0 for a minute. Okay, so the IgA, so the IgA non-inflammatory where was I? Okay. Secretory multimeric IgA in the mucosal surface that's 7 to 15 times more effective than all other antibodies, but does not cause inflammation, that is present in your eyes, nose, mouth, and throat, does not correlate with anything in serum. Doesn't correlate with anything in serum. And so the vaccine induces mostly a systemic response in serum. And and in fact, in the mucosa, it generates a weak response that is biased towards IgG, which is inflammatory and less effective than IgA. So the mucosal response to natural immunity is vastly superior to the systemic IgG response in terms of preventing anything and not getting an inflammatory response. And so you can't measure an index of that in the blood. I don't care if it's T cells or antibodies. If you want a test of natural immunity, it has to be secretory IgA in your nose, mouth, or throat or eyes. End of story. I don't know why you would. I don't see the point of dropping $300 on a T cell test when the evidence is so clear that natural immunity is so overwhelmingly biased towards mucosal immunity. So I don't know if you guys can hear me, but I'm live streaming this call on my YouTube and Facebook. Okay, I don't think they can hear me. Okay. Hochul is the
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted you guys to know I just called the court. The line itself, the delay, just to check in. They said that the case has not started yet, but that this line maxes out at 1,000 people, but they have opened up a new line for additional people to be able to call in. I'm not able to post that number on social media, but I'm wondering if I can provide it to you guys and people can post so that more people can call in if they see it.
Yes, please.
Great.
Yes,
So I'll say it a couple of times. The phone number to call in is 844-721-7237. Access code 922-6235. So again, that's the call-in number is 844-721-7237. Access code 922-6235 #. And just to clarify, we are fine on this line. They said that there's a significant delay. They didn't have a reason that they listed, but we will be able to hear the hearing on this line. But for anyone that couldn't get in, they can now call this additional line to listen.
All right, so I assume everyone heard that, and I just put the number in the chat. That's so we're fine here. We're just waiting for it to start. But for if you know someone who like doesn't do social and wants to call in.
Also on Facebook, Chris Mastodon is also live
Oh. Oh, someone streaming on
Another
Facebook.
way that people can listen in.
How do you spell his last name?
How do I find him on Facebook?
Guys, if you have not had your appeal, bring an attorney. There are attorneys helping. The two girls who we had their appeal done with an attorney are now in a much higher level of their appeal process. I just got off the phone with Elizabeth today. The attorney was on the line, and it was a very good meeting. The gentleman doing the appeal said no one is showing up with attorneys to their appeal.
I had an attorney with me on my appeal, and I was denied. It took over a week for them to give me my denial, but I was denied Sunday afternoon, and I had an attorney help me with my letter as well as be on my appeal with me, and I was still denied.
Okay.
But I still think that it definitely helps. It gives you a step up because they know that you're not playing.
I didn't even have a hearing.
If
Can we get the spelling for Chris's Facebook?
guys, can you hear me? Because I am Chris Masterjohn. Can you guys hear me?
I believe it's Chris Masterjohn.
I don't think they can hear me. Okay.
Excuse me, can somebody help me?
Thank
How do you get an attorney to come to your appeal? Is it a union attorney you're talking about?
No.
You don't use the union anything. Right? You just your own private attorney?
I used a private attorney.
So I'm guessing they have like only a few people can talk, even. So I probably don't even need to be muted. There was probably like a couple people who have permission to talk, and they had to mute. Okay. Okay, so I'm going back up to the live chat. Okay, turn that real low. Going back to the live chat. So Brett Van Zandt says, "Oh, unfortunately, listening to live makes it sound like you don't know what you're talking about regarding COVID." Okay, Brett, why don't you post what I'm wrong about? That might clarify whether I know what I'm talking about. Brett goes on, with your degree in nutrition, maybe you should stick with that. No, I don't stay in my lane. I will never stay in my lane, and I don't take orders from anyone. But if you're familiar with science, anyone who's anyone in thinking about the philosophy of science or science education knows that the major problem with the 20th century was the fragmentation of science into such small nooks and crannies that someone would say like, oh, I don't know anything about carrots because I only study the specific topic of vitamin A of retinoic acid's interaction with PPAR gamma. And science became so fragmented, and this is reflected in medicine, where you can have a nutritional deficiency that causes osteoporosis, heart disease, kidney stones, and maybe even renal failure and cognitive impairment. But no one can figure it out because you're going to your kidney doctor, your cardiologist, your bone doctor, and your neurologist, and they are all stuck in the specific compartment that they're studying. Whereas the problem is a systemic one. And, if there was better collaboration across fields, not only across medical specialties, but with other fields that relate to medicine like nutrition, then we would have a much clearer way of seeing, the primary care could be at a much better position to realize, oh, this pattern, before you go to the specialist, let's check on this nutritional deficiency. And so people who say stay in your lane are stuck in the 20th century, are stuck in recapitulating the greatest errors of the 20th century. And granted, that was associated with lots of massive amounts of increase in knowledge in those specific fields. So it wasn't all bad. There was a lot of amazing things that came out of it. The fact that we became so fragmented in our fields is a bad thing. And when you tell someone stay in your lane, you are recapitulating primarily the greatest errors of the 20th century, not harnessing all the achievements. So no, I'm going to stay in my lane. I think I just accidentally hit test audio. That's why it's doing the Skype thing. I hope. Hope that stops. Why is it doing that? I don't know why Skype is, this is terrible. Why is Skype making that noise? Oh, so the test audio thing on Skype, if you hit it, the stop button is a square that is not filled in and looks like a checkbox. So it's like, I'm not checking the test audio box. Why is it still tested? Why is it still making a noise? So I'll listen into the conversation for a minute.
Religious and medical only, from what I know.
How much is the attorney charging?
If you had a religious exemption hearing, can you give me an idea, because mine's this afternoon, what questions they asked you?
For what I heard, a friend of mine said that they asked her if she was vaccinated when she was a child, if she has children, if her children had been vaccinated, and since when she changed her mind about vaccine.
Some of the research I was doing was that you really shouldn't answer any questions, especially if you don't have a lawyer present. I suggest they did ask me about if I was vaccinated in the past. I said yes as a child. I did bring up the HPV vaccine, which I never vaccinated my own child for. And their lawyer tried to say that it was my political and philosophical beliefs that was preventing me from wanting to take this vaccine. And I said, well, with the HPV vaccine, I feel like I'm going against what God wants.
Okay. Anybody specifically raise Roman?
That's insane, right? So she was, I think this was with the DOE and what they're talking about here. So they were trying to ask her questions to make sure that she didn't develop a philosophical opposition to vaccines at some point that she's claiming is religious. And so she had to disclose that she didn't get her kids vaccinated for HPV. Or maybe she was trying to explain, or I don't know. I mean, with HPV, it's the argument, the religious argument would be like, well, I have conservative sexual values that I don't want my kids sexualized or something like that. But that's nuts that they have a committee that's trying to prove that you don't have a religious belief. It's like an inquisition. Lucas says, Chris, those protest videos are awesome. Keep up the good work. Thank you. There's 6 hours of footage on my YouTube, and I'm in the process of editing it down to a nice collage that's short. So Daniel Crawford says, any thoughts on this graphene oxide claim? I hope it is part of disinformation operation, but I'm not so sure. Images of foreign objects much larger than red blood cells on various images. I don't know anything about the graphene oxide claim, but I do know that there were I heard there was some quality control issues with Moderna in Japan or something, where they recalled a bunch of vaccines because of contaminants or something like that. I'm not well read on it. Sorry. Jan 2852 says parents will be killing their kids from school once mandated. Some people might not care about their own bodies, but when it comes to kids, that's a completely different story. I mean, as they should, right? So the risk reward ratio is very different for kids and adults. And I think people are already pulling their kids out of school. I mean, we've seen epic rises in homeschooling. Many states have passed laws to take funding to students instead of schools.
What they did is they put the person on the spot to say, expand on the letter that you sent, because originally the letter that was sent, cited sincerely held religious beliefs, so on and so forth, and met the criteria that was laid out. So in the appeal, when it was resubmitted, she stated that I have met each criteria laid out. It's not based on philosophical reasons, political, or personal beliefs. I have a signed letter from my pastor, so on and so forth. So they had a hearing last week Friday, and at 0 questions, just had her speak, and then their attorney, so to me, this seems based on philosophical or political reasons, and there's a very narrow window of exemptions because of that arbitrator ruling and whatnot. So she's still waiting to hear the decision on that. But I had read, maybe everybody here is familiar with it, in the Gossamer, where de Blasio says, I believe that historically there's only 2 religions that have been against vaccination, which is Christian Science and Jehovah's Witnesses. So he, in that article, was saying, this is what we're going to accept, and that's going to be it. Knowing that the Catholic Church, the Pope, directed all priests not to write any letters of exemption. So it's the whole thing was a setup from the beginning.
Can everybody hear me? Okay, so really quickly, right before I went on my hearing, before they even saw that I was on the line, the arbitrator spoke to the DOE lawyer and my UFC rep. By the way, it's horrible. She went against me completely, Diane Grant. But anyway, he said before they knew that I was on the line that I was going to automatically lose because our leader, the Pope, is vaccinated. So they might say that to you. They might say that your leader, the Pope, is vaccinated. So we have to say he's not our leader. Our leader is God. And basically, we don't have to follow what the Pope says because the Pope has historically swept under the rug all the rape of boys in churches. So just be ready. They might say that.
Not only that, it's against the Constitution. I mean, it's your belief, how you interpret.
Not sure what happened to the audio here. Is the audio back? All right, it sounds like they're back. So anyway, like the U.S. government or any of its other or any of the governments in the United States don't have the right to tell the shadow pope who thinks that the mainstream pope went rogue in the with Vatican 2 or 1 or whatever it is. You don't have the right to tell you whether you're Catholic or not. It's nonsense. Utter nonsense. The government doesn't have the right to determine what your religion is, period. I mean, is this not ridiculous that in America, which was basically founded, America was founded on, if you didn't like what the Church of England was doing, you took a boat to some faraway place and you said what your religion was. And in New England, there were New England towns had established churches through the 1800s, through the 1830s at least. And if you didn't like the established religion in your town, you picked up and you went next door and you made your own town. American religion in general is founded on the idea that there is no central authority that can tell you what the religion is, whether that's right or wrong. I mean, maybe the Pope is the ultimate arbiter of the word of God, or whatever. The point is that the American government doesn't have the right to tell you whether that's true or not. Neither does de Blasio. But anyway, Giant 2052, I agree. I mean, parents are already taking their kids out of school. I think parents should take their kids out of school. I think these teachers who are fired, yes, they should fight viciously in lawsuits, but then they should also just make their own schools and organize, put the kids and parents that agree with them out and declare independence from the DOE, and create alternative institutions and not comply with the DOE mandates and tie those up in court too. But the more they overplay the hand, the more that people will be furious, right? So like with the Key to NYC mandate, this stuff is only being enforced in jobs. Obviously it's being enforced in people's jobs, but in terms of like you as a customer, all these rules are only enforced in very selective ways, right? So you have to have a Vax card to get into a restaurant indoors. But it is so ridiculously hit or miss. And especially when you're talking about like small, walk in, grab something, go places. They have the sign on the door, but they're not checking anyone's Vax cards. Same thing with the masks. So many stores, like they have a sign that says you need a mask to walk inside. Glance in, none of the staff's wearing a mask, so I don't wear a mask. No one says anything to me. Subway, they doubled the fines to wear a mask. Last night, coming home from the rally, I went in with no mask, walked by cops with no mask. The cops had masks on, walked by cops with no mask, got in the car with no mask. Third of the people on the car had no mask. Third of the people were wearing it under their nose. Third of the people were wearing it properly. I didn't see anyone get fined. So, and Rocco's, right, is openly defying. I don't know how they can more openly and blatantly defy the mayor's executive order than making T-shirts about it, plastering giant signs about it on their window, appearing in the New York Post and talking about it. They are just blatantly with a megaphone advertising everywhere that they are openly defying the mayor's executive order. I don't think they've fined them yet. They're also suing the mayor, but I don't think they fined them. So, meanwhile, they're enforcing the vax mandate at Broadway shows, and some random hit or miss restaurants are enforcing it. It's like, Pro Freedom Eats on Instagram collects who they know is not enforcing it. But most restaurants, you have no idea if they're enforcing it until you walk in. Oh, it's starting now. Someone tell me if you can't hear it, but you should be able to hear it now.
Good morning, Ms. Dempsey. Please be seated, everyone.
Council, starting with plaintiff, please state your name for the record.
Sujata Gibson, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Gibson. Laura Minicucci for the City of New York and the DOE. All right, good morning, Ms. Minicucci. Any other appearances this morning? All right, so just a couple of preliminary announcements before we get going. First, I apologize to people for the delay in getting started this morning, but the delay was occasioned by the fact, ironically, by restrictions as a result of COVID-19. We're here to talk about the city's vaccine mandate for teachers and other employees of the Department of Education. I would just remind people that the court does have rules with respect to social distancing and masking. Anybody not following those rules will be asked to leave the courtroom. Second, it is illegal to rebroadcast or publish live or record any portion of court hearings. If
I didn't know that.
anybody does so, it will be reported to the marshals, who will take appropriate action. Now,
All right, looks like I gotta get off here because I don't want to get arrested, but here's the call in. All right, it was great talking to you guys. Take care.